HR is not just demonstrating the behaviors of the policies, the processes, and the practices that we promote for the culture that we are accountable to set, then that sets the tone for the rest of the organization. Now, leadership has the same accountability, right? Like, it's not HR's job to make people do it, but you do need to model the behavior.
Welcome to the HR Misfits, the podcast about leadership decisions most organizations get wrong, told from the HR seat that actually sees the fallout. We're business-minded, human-centered, and just bold enough to challenge the people systems that no longer work, where polished playbooks end and real leadership begins. We're the HR leaders who've been in the room when things get messy, political, or uncomfortable, leading with heart, grit, and a little bit of sass. If you believe HR should be a catalyst, not corporate theater, and leadership should actually work for humans, you're in the right place. Let's get into it. What's up, Misfits? We're back for another episode. Me, Marci, LaToya. We're going to dig in today. This is all about HR gone wild. Marci's going to kick us off tonight. It's a Thursday night. I'm chilling in my Amsterdam sweatshirt. LaToya just got off work. Marci apparently is trying to make us look bad, and she worked out. I don't know what's going on with her, but that's okay.
I mean, this is her casual athleisure wear.
Athleisure wear, you know what I mean? It's like, but it's like, you know, nowadays, like once you get to a certain age, it's like, is she going to the food store or is she working out? We don't know.
Exactly.
Right?
You'll never know.
You'll never
Versatility.
know. That's versatility, right? So yeah, HR gone wild. I'm sure all of our HR friends listening to this show have heard about, you know what, tongue in cheek, like we're HR misfits, but we're going to talk about some serious HR misfits, the kind that are not allowed in this club, guys. Okay. There's a lot happening in the media. We'll get to the Coldplay stuff. I can't help but want to talk about not HR, but the Michigan coach. Just, there's so many things happening. They're just people related that are just cringy.
We wanted to get famous, but not like this.
Not like this. No.
I used to, so it's so funny you say that because I literally have joked and said the same thing. I'm like, you know, we used to joke and say that we're the forgotten abouts at time in HR. I was like, but guys, you did it wrong. We put ourselves on the map in all the wrong ways, you know, last year. It's like, come on. So yeah, so I agree. I feel like there's a lot we can dive into. And I know we wanted to talk about the SHRM case.
Yeah, let's do it, Marci. Give us the overview. Man. I'm sure everybody on the planet's heard of this, especially in HR. But for those who haven't or just need an overview, take us down the path. What happened?
Yep. So for those who don't know, so SHRM, mighty powerhouse, right? SHRM is the Society of Human Resources and the largest HR authority in the world. So I just want to preface that we're talking about the largest authority. A little detail. Just a small detail.
It's the mothership of HR.
Yes.
The mothership of HR.
The mothership of HR. I love that. Was found violating basic, and I love saying basic because it's true, basic employment law principles that it teaches others. I think that is where the irony sets in for me, is that this is somebody that's, you know, we're seeing them, right, as the authority. And they were found, it was 11.5 million lawsuit. So basically, they were brought up on the discrimination around the plaintiff's name, last name Muhammad, first name was Rehab. She was an instructional designer, and she basically was, you know, stating that during her time of employment, she had a supervisor treat her less favorably than her colleagues. And
than her white counterparts.
Correct. And she was being excluded from meetings. She was being subjected to stricter scrutiny, and she brought, as any employee should, brought this concern up, and then she faced retaliation. So it's an interesting situation because when I read through the details, I was like, okay, so we're no stranger to escalations. We're no strangers in HR to policies then, you know, obviously coming under scrutiny or situations where people violate policies. But in this case, I'm reading through it, and I don't know if the two, I felt like I was face palming the whole time. I was like, well, how do you have an internal investigation being done when the complaint's being raised and the termination paperwork is being prepped in the same process? I'm like, what are we doing? You know, and then I'm reading that the investigator was like, they only did like maybe one investigation prior to this one.
In one training.
Training.
Like one single training.
And I'm thinking to myself, wait a minute, we're not talking about, this isn't a small trade group. This is a powerhouse nonprofit
with hundreds of millions in yearly revenue.
Yeah.
And over 300 million in assets. So I just want to set that, because we're talking just in assets and then roughly serving 340,000 HR professionals globally. So if anything, you're talking about an organization that should probably be setting the standard as it relates to policies, procedures, compliance, investigations. We're over here in HR trying to learn from y'all.
Right. Yeah. And Marci, I just
want
want
this down.
Yes, exactly. And yeah, exactly, LaToya. We thought y'all had this down. And not only did we think you had it down, and the reason we thought that is because I'm sure we're all signed up for the SHRM emails that come our way. I don't know about you guys, and every single year I get tons of emails around how to handle discrimination cases. Join this webinar for how to make sure you're not retaliating. I think I read a stat that 50% of the cases filed with the EEOC are around retaliation. I'm sure I heard that stat from SHRM.
Yeah.
So it's like, SHRM, if you know 50% of the EEOC cases are retaliation,
you know this is an issue.
Yeah, exactly.
Exactly. Yeah. And I think without having to go down the rabbit hole of every detail in the case, because I know this is something where, everybody's going to have an opinion, and I know SHRM is coming forward and trying to defend, but I think it creates a bigger conversation around policy. And I know the two of you probably have tons of examples around this, where I have often said to my leaders, it's like, policy doesn't create the safety. It's a piece of paper that you have words on. Behavior does. Absolutely. And values don't build trust if you're just saying them out loud as words without consistent action. You have to have consistent action behind the things that you're saying. You have to actually put into practice around the policies that you're stating. Otherwise, policy only protects you if your behavior matches it. Otherwise, guess what happens, ladies and gentlemen? It literally could indict you. It literally could be words used against you in court. And I think that's exactly what they're facing right now. And it's caused a big discussion around this, which can't
rightfully
say
so.
Everybody.
Right.
As it should.
As it should.
As it should. I mean, you can't proclaim to be the authority on HR practices and policies and how to do things right, and then don't practice what you preach. So to your point, like you don't, and to take it a step further, SHRM isn't just giving us light suggestions. They're not just consultants. I mean, they actually certify HR professionals and require, some of these webinars are not optional. You need to stay recertified to get this, kind of accredited credential. Like you have to take these things. So you're teaching these things, and yet your internal practices were inconsistent with the things that you are requiring people. Look, many moons ago and lots of perimenopause brain cells ago, I took the SHRM certification, and it was an entire section around employment law. I am pretty confident there was a section on investigations and escalation and things like that. And so again, it's not like they can rest on, we didn't really know what we should do here. Like, and again, in parallel, like doesn't explicitly say that, but planning for a termination while investigating.
That's cool. That's wild.
In parallel
behavior.
Is a huge red flag.
Oh, yeah. God. And
I can't believe that. I mean, that's the part right there. You're right. That is the part that's like, to talk about facepalm, like, oh, and
like, come on.
Not just for them, but like for all of us HR practitioners.
For all of us, yeah.
Because we're all tied to SHRM in some way, right? Or at least, even if we're not maybe certified,
Yeah, not anymore.
Yeah. I mean, right. Okay. Well, can I play devil's advocate for a second, though?
We're asking for an annulment.
Yeah.
Right. Can I get our money back, please? Can I get all those dollars back I spent? Okay. So devil's advocate, like, do we think that we would have felt a little differently about this whole situation if somebody from SHRM would have stepped forward and said, oh my gosh, my bad, mea culpa. We had an employee that we didn't train right. We did the wrong thing. We own it. And instead of saying, please don't put into the record here in court that we're the expert on that. Like, we don't want anybody to know that in this case. So it's like, I just feel like how they handled it really hurt them even more than the allegations, or at least as much as the allegations, right?
Yeah. And I think with that, what stood out for me too is one, exactly that, is just, you would think that, like I said, a powerhouse organization would have everything buttoned up around the investigation process, and think, perhaps we shouldn't allow somebody who doesn't have much experience to do that, to do that
junior
investigation.
person. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but the fact that they were also trying to stop, Rehab Muhammad from presenting evidence about the status as being sort of like the leader in best HR practices, and I was laughing because I was like, so are we bringing a handbook to the court? Because the court is not here to look at your handbook. They're here to listen to the behaviors and the actions. And that is ultimately what got them in trouble, is because we're talking about the standard for workplace practices, and you violated those things. And it doesn't matter, again, like, you can put this beautiful handbook together, and I know I have examples of this. I have very cringeworthy stories that we'll have to probably take with me when I pass on. But
we're getting into those in this show. They're coming out, Marci.
There's so many where I've seen that, and I actually was a leader, an HR leader at one point, with part of an organization where they were doing that. They basically had this mentality of, well, this is a problem employee, and this employee has caused some issues. And when I started to pull the thread of like all these behind the scenes conversations, I said, hold on a second, this looks like retaliation. Like you literally, I said, if I were the employee, that would feel like retaliation to me. And I said, so what was your thought process around the actions that you're taking? Like, what ultimately were you thinking? Because the knee-jerk reaction to, we have a problem, we have an issue, we need to solve it. And it's like, we just have to get rid of it and make it go away. And ultimately, if you're sitting in the court and you're listening to this case, that is what I thought. I was like, they probably felt this is an issue that we need to make go away.
Yep. Well, don't make it go away during the investigation, because clearly there's no proper investigation happening.
That's also, I think it's the call and response thing. And this has happened, to your point, Marci, like, this is where I always caution leaders, especially, like, for example, one of my telltale signs, and I would say, and I have a few of these red flags, is, as my secondary favorite topic, we're in performance management. So since we're going to keep doing that until we don't, we get into performance. I haven't heard anything about Jane Doe all year, but somehow this person does not meet our partial. They just really haven't shown up. Interesting, you should say that. You haven't brought this up before. How do we get here? Well, it's just been a lot of issues. Here's the thing about stuff like this. Organizations, whether this was the behind the scenes or that, they're saying, oh, it's a problem now, and now I want to move to this action. Here's the thing. At the first sign, you see something, you need to start taking action. And so when leaders come to me, no, the time to take action is not now. The action, well, it is, but the action you need to do is, let's start with, how do we try to address the performance issue? Not, well, like, this is just a big problem and I just need to get rid of it. That's a huge problem. That actually says more about your leadership than it does about the situation at hand. Because if you have not been giving this person feedback, you certainly haven't asked for any coaching on the feedback. But now you think magically they should have known, and you're going to use this performance to tell them the feedback and then say, yeah, in like 30 days, I'd like them to be gone. That's a hard no. And it should be for the rest of us as HR leaders. So, like, that's not the direction to go in. And then, yes, these are the types of cases that these are types of actions that turn into cases like this, because it feels like it's a response, aka retaliation, to something else. And maybe that wasn't your thought process. Maybe that wasn't your intent, but the way that the actions played out, it's a real easy correlation. And they say this in a case, retaliation is a go-to thing. The reason there's 50% or so of those cases, because it happens so often that companies don't take the time to document properly, and they move in lockstep and say, now you're a problem, I'm going to get rid of you. You think, like, I had leaders who talk to me all the time, it's at-will employment. That's not what it means.
Oh my gosh.
That's not what it means.
No, honey.
Tell the story, tell the whole.
No. What? That is hilarious, because that is so true. People say that all the time. I don't know. I'll be in some Facebook. I'll be down that rabbit hole, and then I'll hear all these random people saying, "Oh, it's at will employment." Like, oh, I talk about a faceplant. I'm like, no, that's not. Oh, whatever. But I want to say, LaToya, I don't know what I wanted to say. I had so many thoughts but then I just was like, that was like so profound. Yes. So I don't know what.
It's true though. I mean, how many times have we seen that where, it's like, if you had just addressed the root cause of your problems, we wouldn't have to be here. Now we're sitting in court and now you're paying an $11.5 million settlement, right? It's like expensive, right? And it comes back to, again, it's like, well, perhaps watching these trainings and just sitting through them and not retaining that information clearly didn't help you. So again, it comes back to how can we think through the best course of conversation of, exactly to your point, LaToya, because performance reviews are clearly not going anywhere. At least we've talked about it to death, where we thought they were going to go away and they keep coming back. So then the question remains is just like, well, but then the evidence in this case is like, she was actually promoted. Like there wasn't anything to state that this was an employee that had a quote performance issue. So that right then and there, it's like, well, hold on. If you did that thorough of an investigation, that should have been one of the biggest red flags to say, okay, we're terminating this employee who didn't necessarily have a track record of underperformance. But we have seen that quite often in HR, where it gets to a point where leaders, and then they almost freeze because they're afraid of what to say. They get so afraid of the lawsuit that they're afraid of what to say. So then what happens, LaToya, to your point too, is they sit on those things. So then inaction then becomes that, method of like, well, I don't know what to say or how to say it. I'm paralyzed by what to say because I'm afraid of being held liable. So I need HR in the conversation to help me
Yes.
tweak it up.
Yeah.
Right?
Why do managers all the time want to hand that manager baton to HR?
Happens a lot.
So it happens all the time. It's like,
Yes.
can you, or if they don't like physically hand us the baton, like they actually want us to be the ones to have the conversation with their employee, they definitely will say, well, HR said, HR is
they hide
making
behind
me.
us. Yes.
Oh my gosh. It's such a
That was
pain in
my
the ass.
favorite.
Okay. My ADHD was all over the place, but I thought about what I was going to say. This is just, welcome to my world. But what I was going to say was I get so aggravated, annoyed. Maybe I've just maybe it's time for me to retire. I'm not there yet, but like, I just feel myself getting more annoyed the older I get with things like this. But I'm so not there yet. But a manager will talk about putting somebody on a performance improvement plan in the same conversation where they talk about terming them drives me bonkers. Just call it an exit plan. Don't call it a performance.
Be honest about it.
Be honest about it. A performance improvement plan is exactly that, a plan to help their performance. Who would have thought, right? I mean, and honestly, because that happens, employees, they're like, don't like blow smoke up my ass. You're trying to get rid of me when you put me up. Yes. And so I'm like, it's really frustrating when that happens. I think that's one of the things that I really I try to coach managers on. And thank goodness, like we've got some pretty good habits created where I'm at right now, because if we're putting you on a performance improvement plan, I actually don't have to have too many of those conversations with managers. It's more employees. I'm on a performance improvement plan. Are they trying to get rid of me? No, we're trying to get you from A to B. We're trying to really, truly, and I've seen a lot of performance improve when somebody's on a performance improvement plan.
I was going to ask you that. Have you seen that? Because I think employees feel that there's no way out of that sometimes. They feel like once that performance improvement plan's coming to their attention.
That could be right. Depending on their manager, depending on their leader, that could be true, So it's our job, right, to equip our managers.
I think you're right. It depends on the leaders, right? Like and this is where we play a big role, because to your point, Amy, if the conversation we're having about initiating a performance improvement plan is already intertwined with termination, besides just you're allowed to ask questions, leaders, if you're listening. But if your question is how long, like for example, I've heard these words verbatim. How long until we can terminate them? Again, another red flag. So this is the type of thing that you should be able to watch out for, because what I think happens in that is that if you're already going into it with a predetermined mindset of what the outcome is going to be, how good of a coach in the performance improvement plan are you going to be? And so I can coach you and try to redirect your thought process on this. But I'm also, again, not going to be able to do that for you. So if the leader is not committed to actually improving performance and it's just like, hey, I just got to check the boxes and go through the time that it takes. Side note, I've also had people, can we speed this process up? Can we cut this in half? Again, another red flag. But all of those things are indicators of that. And then they say things to employees. And again, I don't know everything that was said here to this woman, but things like that is where you're fueling the lawsuit pipeline at this point, because all of those are very valid reasons to believe that your intentions were not on the positive side of this. And then, in this case, it is not just retaliation, but also discrimination. To my reason to believe is that all of this has happened as a result of someone's bias or, discrimination. The burden of proof is on the employer. And if your actions have aligned to the things that we saw in this case, then it's not really a hard determination. Like, whether that was your intent, the impact is there.
Well, that's the thing. And again, at the end of the day, I always say this too, is people judge us by our actions, not our intentions. Your intentions can be pure, right? But your actions are what people observe. That's the observable takeaway that people have, is the way you show up, how you act, the things that you say. And it's okay if at times, hey, this was my intention, it didn't come out appropriately. And sometimes with the leaders, I'm like, well, how about stop running from the conversation and actually just be honest and just say, you know what? I probably fumbled this a little bit. I could have done better in this conversation. Talk to me about how I made you feel in that moment. And I promise to do better. And as somebody who has had the privilege and the honor of being a people leader of multiple, when I say multiple, different levels, different backgrounds, different race, generations, experiences, sexuality, gender, literally all of it. Like, I've had such a privilege of doing that. And one of the first things that I do is I sit down and I have zero assumptions. I won't even listen to what somebody else has to say about the person. I get the feedback. I'll get like historical context after I have the initial conversation, because I want to understand from their point of view what it is as their leader I could be doing differently, or how do they like to be managed, or has there been times where they maybe felt left out. And I will tell you, I had a woman who similar background to this plaintiff. And that was one of my first questions, because I was like, I'm not going to sit here and assume I know everything about how life has been for you or how the workforce shows up for you. So talk to me, tell me. And we ended up developing an amazing relationship. And all I had to do was just be vulnerable, because I wasn't going to be the expert on everything and know exactly, because I also say, like, I hate when people say, like, oh, I know exactly what you're going through. No, you don't. No, you don't. Right. You can say you understand. You can understand where somebody's coming from, but you don't know, because you're not walking in their shoes. And that would be one of the first things that I would admit and say. And I remember saying to her, I said, if I ever fumble the ball or I ever say something, or I said, I want to be called out. I want to be called out, because I'm trying to be better as a leader there. And I remember I was a first-time people leader when I had this conversation. And so I knew. And I think people get so afraid to say things and be honest and be open and be vulnerable, because they're afraid of judgment, or they're afraid they're going to say the wrong thing. And I think the world views this as, we live in a culture where lawsuits can happen in any minute. But come on. Like,
yeah.
You have to really fumble the ball to get to that point
Honestly.
where there's a lawsuit.
Absolutely. Because I think that's another thing I keep thinking about is, and I'll kind of introduce kind of this Coldplay situation, right? I know it's kind of, old news these days, ever since SHRM decided to, take us down this path. But that whole scenario, like, I don't love it. Clearly, they both should have been let go, as they were, or resigned, whatever you want to call it. But, I understand organizations are made up of people, and people make mistakes and they make the wrong turn sometime, but it's just really, really tough when it happens to an HR person. And let's be clear, like, we're probably going to fuck it up tomorrow. Who knows? Like, we're messy. We're human. We nobody's perfect. But the SHRM thing is like, dude, really? Like, it's so extreme. And this Coldplay thing, extreme. Like, even that is shocking. It's like, I can't even imagine. Like, I just can't understand it.
You're in a public setting. You're literally in a public setting.
You at the time, it's 2025. It's not like
cameras everywhere.
Like my kids say when we grew up. When before the story could make it out, they said that, and I'm like, that's true, but why does it sound so bad? Like, it's crazy. But it's like back in our day, Golden Girl, you know, you had to take that picture to Walgreens, get it developed, pass it to your friends. Like, it would have taken a long time for that story. But like, again, this is why many of us are in the positions that we are, because there wasn't real documentation. But you see this every day. The interconnection between social media and corporate America is strong. And the people that are still in denial about that use this as a reminder that I don't even think those people had left the concert before it was on social media. Like, everyone's talking about it. So it's like, at some point, there's just basic judgment. Like, yes, can you have a team building, exercise or outing with your colleagues? Yes. Is there inappropriate behavior that could happen in said things, and you should be mindful of that? Because it wasn't even like they were just alone. They had other people in the company.
That's wild.
That was my biggest thing there. It's like there's so many layers of issue there.
That one was wild.
You're
that
the
one I was
people
like,
that are running the company. The policies, you're setting the company strategy and the culture, and you think that it's appropriate to have this type of interaction, whatever that was.
Yeah.
And then you also think it's totally fine for other people to see that, because, again, like, we run the company and we're exempt from that.
Couldn't have found somebody like, I don't know, the VP of sales,
right? Like, somebody who's on the road a lot, like
somebody who's not the CEO that you report to.
There's a Hinge. I mean, they're like, I know the dating world is rough. Let's try not to date your boss.
Like, we get it. Like, we get it. We know it's rough out there. But at the same time, it's just like, come on, man, discretion, like a little bit of discretion. That's why I joked in the beginning. And I said, true. It's just like, I say that all the time. I'm like, words can just be hot air without any actions or actual accountability behind them. It's just, that's why the words values, don't build the trust. It's like, sure, I could put all the values that are important to me, but it's like, if you're not consistent with your actions and your behaviors, they're just words. They're just words on paper. And it's just, come on, guys, like, we got to do better. And that's why I said, HR put themselves on the map in all the wrong ways in these situations. It's just, we're human beings. We absolutely are imperfect. Like, I gave my example about being a first-time people leader for a reason, because listen, I was scared shitless. There was times where I was like, oh, I just hope I get this right. And I was so in my head. And I remember in that moment just thinking, just have a conversation with people, Marci. Like, just talk to people. And that's what I did. And I was just so grateful that, we got to that point where, people literally said, you know what, Marci, there's been times where I felt like this, or I was left out of a meeting, or the biggest thing I heard is I had a very intelligent young Black female who said to me, I would come up with ideas in the meeting and somebody else would take credit. And my manager would take credit. And so that stayed with me. I will never forget that. So it's like, I remember going out of my way to make sure. I was like, how can I give her the visit? Because first of all, I'm a people leader. If she looks good, that's what I should want. Like, I should want that. Yes. I should want her to shine. And of course. But people, it gets competitive and people get threatened. And, you see that, right? You see that for sure. But then don't be a people leader. Like, if your ego can't get past the notion that you might have people on your team smarter than you, then you shouldn't be a people leader, because frankly speaking, I'll hire people more intelligent than me all day long. All day long.
That works for me.
Yeah. And this is, again, like, HR, like, in that case, I know in the Coldplay, because a lot of, when it was happening, I was like, of course, I had people reaching out to recommend me, like, what is your specific opinion on this? I was like, oh, I got lots of opinions.
Yeah.
But similar to what you said, a lot of people, oh, well, HR, like, instead of saying what I was thinking, I would tell you, my initial reaction was not, oh, well, they're treating her differently because she's a woman. And maybe that's true, because there are biases. But my initial thought is, like, to some degree, as an HR leader myself, I think they had shared accountability. Let me be clear. But however, people start coming off that are saying that there was cultural issues in this company. There was a lot of issues going on. And yes, if you are looking up at the top, and this is why tying it back to SHRM, like, if the mothership, whether it's in the department, in the company, in the governing body of the function, is getting off center, it does erode a little bit of the culture. So again, it's more than just the words. And so people do hold a lot of things. If HR is not just demonstrating the behaviors of the policies, the processes, and the practices that we promote for the culture that we are accountable to set, then that sets the tone for the rest of the organization. Now, leadership has the same accountability, right? Like it's not HR's job to make people do it, but you do need to model the behavior. So I said, my first reaction as an HR leader was, how dare you do this to the function? Now people are going to be looking at me sideways, like HR people can't follow their own process.
Like it's like, man, you're making us look bad, especially
So
that piece where I was like, oh my gosh, she literally was trying to push for the evidence to be shared that this is the standard, like they're the gold standard, like this status as SHRM being the best in HR practices. And SHRM was literally trying to say, no, that shouldn't be entered as evidence. I'm like,
right,
you're the authority.
Yeah.
Like,
why would that not be entered? It's like the most key piece of evidence.
Yeah. And so that's why I was just like, come on. Like it made it cringe to read some of the takeaways. And again, like, we're talking about something that, look, we weren't all there and saw every single detail. So I know SHRM is basically saying that they're going to appeal. They feel very strongly that they have evidence to show that for them.
I look forward to hearing all about that.
And
maybe
hey,
we'll be eating our words, guys. We don't know.
And here's the thing, then go for it. Like that's what, we all have the right to do that, right? We have the right to appeal. We have the right to, and if they make their case, okay, but it doesn't look good. For me, what doesn't look good is again, the investigation process itself. Like that is where, so regardless if there's other evidence that comes forward or whatever, it's just, but to then sit and put termination paperwork together while you're just, it's like, then you're immediately like going back to earlier, what we said, it's just, I have a problem and the problem isn't me. The problem is them and I need them to go away.
Like,
hold on.
Being in full circle to your point, Amy, your question around like, would it felt different? I still would have been very disappointed in
of course
that they didn't have a better process, right? Like, again, they could have just read their own handbook, but also it does change things if you take accountability early on. Like, it's okay. Is it going to make this all go away? No, but it's certainly not going to exacerbate that. So there are times where I'm just like, we have investigations come across where it's just like, okay, for all intents and purposes, if employee X is saying, I feel like I'm being discriminated against, the investigation plays out and then the outcome, I'm like, yeah. Or the investigator says, it does appear that there were discriminatory behaviors. As a company, as an organization, instead of trying to sweep that under the rug and say, okay, well, maybe we just offer that person a package and then they'll go away. That is not usually going to play out. Again, we're in a time where information travels real fast. People are very savvy because information is available to them. You think they could take your offer and then immediately go talk to a lawyer and then still come back with something that would allow them to turn this into something like that, versus a company saying, hey, while we are accountable to train our leaders to be better, we are also accountable to hold them to a code of conduct standard. And if you violate that, we will hold you accountable. So if something goes wrong, acknowledge it. Don't try to hide it. And this is an important role for HR to say, like, if the investigation, let's not encourage the behavior that says, okay, now that we know that, we got to figure out how this doesn't look bad on us, because there is a little bit of an overlap between PR and HR. Like, don't get into this cycle with the company, and integrity within HR is really important. Like, you've got to be the one, sometimes you got to be the one to say, I don't agree with that. Like, I don't believe that the right thing to do here is to try to get rid of the problem.
Right. And it's a slippery slope.
And if the issue is that leader.
Yeah, I was just going to say, LaToya, it's a slippery slope too, because then let's just say that you give that package and they go away quietly and you got lucky this time. What you've done is condone a behavior, and guess what? It's going to happen again and again, and your company, and again, and so all you've done is kick the bucket down the road for the next time it happens, which could be worse or more expensive or whatever.
$11.5 million.
And if they get smart and find out the other people that they allegedly believe may have had this situation, oh my gosh, now you have a class action lawsuit.
I was just going to say that.
In this chapter, it's like, what happens when this happens over and over again? Because this isn't just an isolated situation. It's a behavior. And that can impact people that are even still in the company. Because again, to your point, Amy, if you're allowing the behavior, then it becomes an acceptable practice. And again, people, they go out and find other people. Where there's smoke, there's fire. And I have said that in many meetings and related to topics like this. This is likely not an isolated event. If that leader has done this, they've probably done it before. In fact, I don't even think the investigation should be over at this point because we need to figure out what else is going on in this organization. And if you don't, they might find their friends and a lawyer and then turn this into a class action lawsuit, which also happens a lot.
Yep. That's right. What do you guys think about I know a little bit kind of sidestepping. So SHRM, Coldplay. And by the way, like, I just want to say too, listen, we're being hard, as we should, on SHRM, this governing body, and this whole Coldplay thing. But the truth is, I would not want anybody shining a light on me when I was in my 20s. Can I just tell you, in my first HR job, I was in Kansas City. I came home to Indianapolis. I was a young 21, fresh 21. I wanted to stay home and party with my friends. So I called in sick, and my boss was like, I didn't go back to Kansas till Tuesday. When I went back, I will never forget him saying to me, Amy, your team really was counting on you. They needed you. And I was crushed. You know how when your dad is like, I'm disappointed in you. And you're like,
I'm disappointed in you.
Yeah. It's like, I'd rather just give me a spanking instead of telling me you're disappointed. That's how I felt in that moment, because I respected him so much. He was such a great leader and a mentor to me. And like, I owed a lot to him. And the fact that I disappointed him and disappointed myself, I'm like, did I really just do that? I want to tell you that I never did that again, we've all done dumb shit and made mistakes and had bad behavior. But when you are the executive HR leader and you are, canoodling at the Coldplay concert with your CEO, that is a problem. Okay. So anyways, but I did want to ask a question of you. I want to switch gears to this University of Michigan situation, which, by the way, there's like so many elements here. I know that we don't have a ton of time to get into it, but I am like curious about your thoughts on this, because first I want to just say, I hope he's okay. I mean, mental health is a big deal. And when you get like some serious, when you get fired from your job and you're kind of knocked off that pedestal, there is a lot, I think, of feelings that come with that. Yes, he created this bed himself, no question about it, and did all the wrong things. But I'm more interested in talking about like this power play. Like, again, you've got this high level coach, right? And this, assistant. I'm surprised that we are still surprised that this stuff happens and what the outcomes can be. Why do people, this coach, these people at the Coldplay concert, think that they are invincible and untouchable? And it'll, especially LaToya, to your point, in this day and age, right? Why is this happening? Just the flesh gets a hold of us? Is that what this is?
I mean, and coming out of the University of Michigan thing, yeah, the type of stuff that I was hearing from people, again, not necessarily HR practitioners who had the SHRM certification, people that were saying things like, but it was consensual. They're adults. Like, what he does in his private life doesn't matter. X, all incorrect answer. Here's the thing. When you get to a certain point in your career, your personal life does matter. And if you don't like that, then accept that. I tell people all the time, when I used to do onboarding stuff, I give people all these documents, and I have to remind leaders all the time, you sign things like a code of conduct agreement, non-disclosure, lots of things. And they're just like, oh yes, thank you for the offer. It's so awesome. I can't wait to join you. And then when stuff like this comes out, yes, okay, you can say that. Here's the thing. At paragraph 6, page 4, you said you understood that the policy was you cannot have any type of relationship with people that are less senior than you or in your organization. You signed all of this, but we tend to forget that. And I think that's where I was trying to say, I'm like, hey, people, as your HR friend, let me just remind you, most of these things it's a policy. Now, every company doesn't have nepotism policies or code of conduct. If you don't, you should. But also in this case, that is the reason for, now this one I dug deep in, because I was like, no, they called out his reason for termination because he violated that policy specifically. He signed an agreement that clearly stated you cannot have any type of relationship outside of the work relationship with someone that was a subordinate of you, which is a good practice to have because you're in a position to make decisions that can impact people's pay, their talent.
And he did impact her
pay. That is why they do this. And he did all of those things.
I mean, allegedly. I don't know.
The side note where he's married and all these other things. I care on the personal note because I'm just like, that's not cool.
Right.
But on an HR note, I was like, yeah, you violated a very clear policy. And then all the things that can go wrong in these types of scenarios, you did that. You deserve to be fired.
Yeah, went wrong. Yeah. Hard lesson to learn.
Yeah.
Hard lesson to learn, man.
Yes. No, I was just saying, people were like, well, why didn't she get fired too? Number one, she reported him and she didn't sign the same agreement, which is actually a fact. She was not the one who had to uphold the agreement because, she actually reported it, but she also was not the one who was held accountable because he was the more senior person. And again, that part is a choice, but that was one of the reasons why she didn't have the same recourse from the situation.
I think that makes sense. Yeah,
man.
I want to ask: Have either of you ever been named in a suit, or maybe not a suit? I've not been named in a lawsuit, but I have been named in an EEOC claim. And let me just tell you, not fun, not fun. And clearly I'm still bitter about it. I am still bitter about it. I'm frustrated. I think I had. This has happened. It's happened a couple of times. Thankfully, this is just the joy of being in HR. But at one time, I had to let someone go on my team, and they filed a suit that I was discriminating against them because they were a woman over 40. And I also was a woman over 40. So I was like, okay. I mean, which doesn't mean you can't discriminate against somebody over 40 if you're over 40. That can happen, but it did not happen. Very disheartening and so hard. I think that's one of the other things about HR that's just so tough. We're people too. We have feelings too. To be accused of something that you have absolutely not done. Thank God we had so much documentation and proof, and that went absolutely nowhere.
Because you had documentation.
Because I knew what I was doing, and I
did you
and you had action to back it up.
Yes, absolutely. Of course.
There you go.
But still hurtful. It's like,
it is.
It's so hurtful.
But it's not personal. The person in that moment is feeling an emotional response. They're in a bad place, right? Potentially mentally, emotionally. There's a lot of things that trigger that. And it's not personal against you. It's they feel in their heart that an injustice has been done. And they feel that they want to pursue an action which would show in their favor. But ultimately, when you act with integrity and you have the actions to back up those policies, like you stated, it all works out, right? And nobody's perfect. And there's absolutely things that we've all done where we're like, damn, but that's how you learn. But when you blatantly and openly discriminate, when you blatantly and openly decide, I know I signed this policy, but I want to go diddle my coworker. Like, come on, like, it's just like
and then give her a $40,000 raise. That sounds great.
Exactly. It's just like those are things that I'm sorry. Those are the consequences of your actions. Like you actually can't get away with that. If you wanted to do your thing and have an affair, if there's the CEO and the HR leader wanted to go do their thing, it's like we can't ultimately follow you around and watch your behavior on a personal level. But when you decide you're going to put it out there in a public setting, or when you decide that you're going to act in a way that you feel you're untouchable and you're invincible, those are the consequences that end up catching up to your actions because you're not untouchable and you're not invincible. If you don't want things like that to happen to you, you have two choices. One, don't put yourself in that position and make better choices. Or two, don't put yourself in a position to climb the corporate ladder and be in a highly visible role.
That's right.
You want to do what you want to do. Like,
it's pretty simple.
Take another path. And it's really not that hard. And I agree. I think that, Amy, I've definitely been on the other side of that where it's just like, if I hold myself in higher integrity and then know that I've done the right things, still that initial gut punch when your name is indicated or legal has to call you, be like, okay, just so you know, your name is also, and like, it feels like a personal attack. I said all the things, right? Like I called it all the red flags. And like, and it does feel like that. But Marci, I can't agree with you more. You have to take a step back and say, like, I know that I did the right thing. And again, been in the game for a long time. I got receipts upon receipts. Like, so no, we're going to get through that, but it is painful. And again, like I said earlier, even with the burden of proof is on the company, right? They come in with whatever it is that their perception of what reality is. And most of the time it is not intent. They're not being deceitful. They're telling their truth. This is what I experienced, which we're not saying that that's not how you felt, but our documentation, our evidence should support the fact that that's not actually what happened. And when your evidence does not support that is when you find yourself in a situation where you have to pay out millions of dollars because you did not do that. And again, it could also be you're not just named anymore. And also this is why we talk about the importance of like a document. And this is why people love HR so much in some cases, because we're just like document. So they're the person where you're like, I got you, because we got 16 folders with all the things that I told you to do and send, and it's been protected and it's in a legal hold. So we're all good. But it is still a lot of work, and it takes a lot of time, even just to prove that what you did, you did all the right things. You still sometimes have to show that, but it is so important to do those things. And that's why, like, for our HR family, like, if you are hearing, like, if leaders are trying to coach you, like, let's speed this up, you're like, I don't want to have to go through all that. Oh, that just seems like a lot. Listen, sometimes you have to remind them this could go very differently. Like,
that's right.
It's going to take a whole lot more time for us to be in, like, I've been in like an 8-hour like arbitration where you're going back and forth. Like, you don't want trust me, this is going to take a whole lot less time than what it could be if we don't document and do the right things the right way and give it its due process.
That's right on. And it's less expensive, guys. Like, do it right. We won't be in court shelling out millions of dollars. So
with your name on a headline somewhere, nobody wants that.
No, nobody wants that. I 100% agree with that, LaToya. And it brings up, I think, we can go down a rabbit hole with this one, but it brings up a broader conversation around people leadership and the responsibility that you take when you decide that you are going to lead teams. And there's such a thing as leading from the front and then leading from behind. And you have to know when those moments are, and know when, you have to trust your team to make decisions, when you can't be micromanaging everything. But you also made the decision that you wanted to lead people and be responsible for people.
For other people, right?
And for other people. And that means, like it or not, you are responsible for how you're making your team feel every day. That emotional intelligence is part of the equation. And if you have somebody on your team who's showing up to work, who feels excluded from meetings, who's looking around at other colleagues and they're going, okay, what's wrong with me? Why am I not being given the chances? Why do I feel this way? I feel like crap showing up to work every day. You need to be able to have that conversation with the employee, and they need to feel heard. If you would just let that person feel heard in that moment and say, oh shit, this was not my intention, and wow, I really messed this up, and like, how can I make this better, and fix it in that moment. Oh my God, you could have saved how much money and
so much stress.
It's sometimes it's as simple as that. It's just like, have the conversation, regardless if it's uncomfortable. I've never, and the two of you, please, like, let me know if you've experienced this. I've never had an employee come up to me and say, Marci, as my HR leader, I need to complain to you because my people leader was very honest with me.
Right.
Never happens.
No.
They may say they were very honest with me. It was, and I didn't like what they said. I didn't like what they said, but they were honest with me. Mm-hmm. They actually told me something that I haven't heard, and I needed to hear that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly. Well, listen, I think we should put a disclaimer out here. Everybody, Marci, use your elevator voice. I'm going to say it, but you're going to say it so much better. All of the people we've talked about today and the organizations are innocent until proven guilty.
Right.
These are just allegations.
We're not the judge, the jury, the executioner here. We're just having an honest conversation about what we feel went wrong. Yeah, and in this case, evidence was provided, a decision was made, but we are not here to say that, we know every single fact about the case. So if SHRM decides to come back and they have appeal and something happens, okay, fine. We're only speaking on behalf of what we've experienced in the workforce, how these things can go wrong. LaToya gave some really great examples. You gave some great examples, Amy, where you've been a part of that personally. And I think that's the whole point, is that we can see how these things can go off the rails and what could happen when we're not careful with buttoning up our policies and actually showing what we mean by the policies. Because again, you might as well light that paper on fire. Those policies don't mean anything if you're not actually enacting them and you're showcasing them, to your employees. So that's ultimately what we're saying is that, man, this really went wrong in so many ways for HR.
That's right.
Totally.
That's
like,
right.
again, and I think that the thing that I want people to really take away, I think if you take anything away from this, besides the fact that these are our opinions and they are not related to anything else we're associated with at that end of the elevator pitch.
That's right. That's right.
They're our personal opinions. But also it's again, to build on what Marci said, policies are paper at the end of the day. It's not about that. The truth and the true litmus test and to really drive your culture, it's about how you enforce those policies, how you hold people accountable, how you hold leaders accountable to the role that they have in organizations as leaders. And also us as HR leaders, we play a huge role in how we show up, how we act. Obviously, we have to practice what we preach, because without that, all of these policies are just pieces of paper. They mean nothing until you can back it up with the right action. And you've got to be willing to be the person to say what needs to be said, even if it's uncomfortable. Even if what is being asked to be, regardless of what the hierarchy is, X the title, do what you know is right, even if it's uncomfortable. And if nobody wants to listen to you, you are not exempt from escalating outside of the organization. Everybody has a boss. There's a governing authority over every authority. If the mothership of HR can go down, anybody can go down.
Sure. Amen. I feel like I could pick this up and drop it. Mic drop from LaToya.
The mic has been dropped.
The mic has been dropped. Drop the mic. Thank you, HR Misfits, for joining us for this super fun episode. These girls are awesome. We're having a great time. We will see you again really soon.
Thanks for listening to HR Misfits, where people leadership gets real. If this conversation resonated with you, follow the show and subscribe wherever you watch or listen. And if you're a leader navigating complex, high-stakes people decisions, we're also building the HR Misfits Collective, a place for real counsel, not HR theater. You can find us online at www.thermisfits.com.